Okay, what a great episode. You're definitely going to want to listen to this.
Yeah. Ryan Berman of the Courageous Podcast, one of our favorite people. He's so lovely. We've been on his podcast and we asked him to come on and talk about basically like everything that he's learned from kind of interviewing 220 people about courage and, you know, talked about what it's like in today's landscape, which honestly is quite in need of some courage. So it's a super fun episode. I think there's a lot of takeaways for CMOs. I think there's some takeaways in there for agency folks and even people who are coming up through the ranks and talking about like what that means to be in the ranks and how you can lead and do all that.
Yes.
So it's a really fun episode, and I think there's a lot to take away from
it. Yes, for sure there are. I think you're definitely going to want to listen. Talked about the Courage Challenge, CMO leadership struggles, which are real. He brought up some really, really good examples. Team dynamics, clarity, the clarity epidemic, and a few things.
That was a good one.
Yeah. So it was amazing. Take a listen.
Hey everyone, it's Chris.
And Kirsten.
Welcome to Good Thinking Weekly, the podcast where we discuss the best of the best in brands, marketing, and culture.
Thousands of people, top execs from the likes of Complex, Klaviyo, Walmart, Wall Street Journal, and LVMH tune in every single week.
We run a creative consultancy in GoodCo, so we know what it takes to build a good brand.
Subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcast app, and Good Thinking on Substack for more.
All right, let's dive in.
Ryan Berman, welcome to the pod.
Hello.
I love you guys. Thank you for having me. You guys are my people. You know how I feel about you. I mean, I think the last time I described you guys as like Thelma and Louise. Like, thanks for letting me in the car. Thanks for letting me in the backseat of the car today.
It's great to have you here. Yeah.
It's going to be chaos.
Yeah, we may go over the edge today, so buckle up.
All right, seatbelts on. Let's roll.
So let's do a little intro.
Yeah. Tell us, or do you want me to introduce you? Or do you want to introduce yourself?
I would love for you to introduce me. That would be great. Yeah.
All right. I was like, who is Ryan? I mean, besides being an amazing person, right? Which I think if that's not clear from the beginning, we feel that way about you. But yes. Ryan hosts this great podcast that we've been on. I'll link to our episode so you can hear it. But he has an amazing podcast called The Courage Podcast. And you've had like, I don't know, 220 people? That's wild. 220 people that you've interviewed, including a 9-year-old, which obviously is the cutest thing in the world, but also Navy SEALs and CEOs and an astronaut and oh my God, like everybody and their mother, every brand you could imagine, Liquid Death, Google. I mean, I'm reading this off and it just sounds like the world's craziest resume for a podcast. What we wanted to kind of dive into today was what are the learnings that you've had after talking to 220 people? I mean, surely there's a lot, and you sent us some of them, so we know kind of what we want to talk about. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk about the really, and Kirsten will talk about this too, but like the really kind of like secret feelings that you have after doing this. Like not the things that you talk about on your podcast, which are amazing, but really like your secret feelings, Ryan's secret feelings. So I want to get into that.
A great title of a show, Ryan's Secret Feelings.
Yeah, but like the things that you like, you know, you've had time to reflect. That's what we asked you to do, like reflect on this time and like tell us what you kind of the biggest learnings are. And I think there are a lot. So that's what I want to get into today.
Yeah, agreed. Because, you know, we were on your podcast, obviously did some research with you. You're very accomplished. You have your Courageous podcast, but you've also been on the agency side of things. Like, I'm sure we've had some crossover. So wasn't sure what to expect when we first met you, and we instantly fell in love. And I think what we want to make sure that we're sharing with our audience is why we adore you, how much we connected with you. Like, there's really, you have such knowledge and you have such experience and you have such a beautiful way of speaking to people, but we want to really is that a word? Kind of gain really the specific insights that you have and those feelings and what you've been able to access. That's what we want to share.
I'm all for it. I mean, for starters, I can't get away with that saying like why we all get along is I think because when I looked at your stuff, first of all, Chris, you illegally put me on your newsletter. Let's just call that what that was. Like, because like how else would I have just suddenly this amazing content showed up in my inbox? Because that's kind of how I found you too.
Yeah, I mean that might be my fault.
It's definitely Kirsten's fault.
So I'll take
I'll take that.
With
her, then you're on our newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, bad cop.
But also, you're welcome.
Thank you. No, totally. Thank you. Because I never would have. I don't know when I would have stumbled into you and what I like learned right away. And I think I shared this on when you guys came onto my podcast is like my theory on this whole thing. And if you're a CMO listening right now, like you kind of have to care and not care at the same time. You have to like deeply care about your work, and you have to not care that you might upset somebody or ruffle feathers along the way. Like if your value system says you should say something, fucking say it.
I think that's the only thing in my value system, which is the problem.
But that's why I think that's why this works. Like I'm sure like you, when we all started, that's not how I started. You know, you're on your journey and you're like, at least I felt like I learned what to do by watching what not to do. And then you're like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. And then you're like, I'm never going to do that again. And then like suddenly like, wait a minute, why am I not just being myself? And so that's sort of like the biggest takeaway even from the podcast is like almost everyone who's come on the show, I don't think most of them would be like, I'm courageous on the Courageous podcast. I think they're like, I just try to keep it real. I just try to be me. I know that's hard. I'm trying to summon that out of other people. So whether it's, a Navy SEAL to someone that's trying to navigate this crazy corporate climate right now, it's still them just doing the best to stay real and then disarm the people around them. I also want to give you guys one last little shout out, a little bit of love, because, and you know this, when you're a podcast host, your role is very different than when you're a keynote speaker, which I do a lot of now, somehow, some way, when you're counseling on a business. Because when you're a podcast host, your job is to get out of the way as fast as possible and create like the guardrails, because I want to hear your story. So thank you for letting me at least share a little bit of my world and my story, because usually I'm like just trying to bite my lip and get out of the way.
Well, we don't want you to bite any lips.
No. No one biting any lips. That's a different episode.
Yeah, but one of the things you wrote to me or wrote to us was that you were like, and you just said it now, like, oh, nobody feels that they're courageous. And obviously I relate to that. British woman, there's lots of reasons. But like, do you think that, like, is it still important to be courageous? Like, is it like valuable? Like you were kind of questioning it in your reply. Like you were like, oh, I'm not sure that anyone really identifies with this. And so like, why, I guess, like, do you think that is important?
Yeah. So we're like blending different, I'll call them missions. Like, I feel like my life has been a series of missions. And one of the missions that I went on was writing Return on Courage, which was my first book, which is weird to say your first book because that means there's another book. But like, let's stay focused on that. Like, how do you write a book? How does somebody do that? Right? How do you write a good book? Because we don't need another shitty book. There's plenty of shitty books out there. So I basically had the pleasure of shutting up for 2 years and going around and interviewing all these amazing people. I mean, when you come from our business, yes, I've got my little pithies now. Like I'm like, oh, the brave, the bullish, and the brainiac. That's who I ended up. I didn't realize it at the time, but the more, you start to sit with astronauts and Navy SEALs and firefighters, you're like, wow, like, why do these people do what they do? How do they do what they do? And then on the bullish side, leaders at Google and Alexa and Apple. And then on the brainiac side, people that study the way we're wired, right? Why does some of us tiptoe right up to a courageous moment then leap and most of us don't? And the first question I asked myself after like the first few interviews, I was like, oh shit, is this like a monetizable idea? Like, does anybody actually think they need to be courageous, or they're just like, especially public companies, they're so overwhelmed and are just so like, I just have to get to the next board meeting and get ready for that. Right. It's just, and it's like, wow, like, am I wasting everyone's time here with this project? And it was sitting with a guy named Jay Cohn Gilbert. Wait, am I getting that right? Jay Gilbert Cohn. I think he ran B Corp. He started B Corp. He also started And1. And Jay said something to the fact like, wow, that's so, he's like, when you actually like refocus, it's like, it's all about courage. Like everything is courage. And sometimes we forget that when we're not courageous, we're getting caught up in the day to day. And to me, it gave me the green light to like at least pass go on that first story and keep going. And from that moment on, I'm like, all right, it's a little bit of like one hand in today and one hand in tomorrow. You can't have two hands in today. You got to be courageous and get to your actual tomorrow moment. So that gave me a lot of confidence. So the answer, I guess, is a long-winded way of saying yes. I think if you're not being courageous, the stuff that still stands out in this media obese world that we're living in, it is the brave idea. It is the courageous product. It is somebody saying no to something that's unjust. And so we certainly need courage now more than ever, and with everything that's going on in the world.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. That's a whole other podcast, Ryan. I mean, like what's going on in the world. Like we can't unpack that today. But like I do think like that's the reality is that actually like brands don't really have the choice of not dealing with that anymore, right? Like they have to kind of be courageous and figure out that. So that's even more intense. Kirsten, I don't want to monopolize. I know you've got a lot of questions.
I mean, I do have a lot of questions. I think to me, it goes back, Ryan, to what you were saying really, as far as thinking about our audience and thinking about who, if you're a CEO, if you're a CMO, if you're at an agency, if you feel the thing, you really need to say it. And I think looking back as kind of you started your career, I think I started in a similar way, right? I learned a lot of things not to do. I worked in a lot of corporate companies, typically had a very entrepreneurial point of view or role, but worked in kind of corporate companies and learned what to do by learning what not to do. I think Chris, maybe it's a generational thing, maybe it's a British thing, learned a different way, which to me is way more inspiring of just like doing the right thing to start. But what is it? This is kind of where we're coming from. What is it in talking to all of these people that you found is kind of the secret sauce that says these people are kind of the courageous ones and these people aren't? Like what have you identified as that?
I mean, I think you really have to know what you're about. Like, if you don't know what you stand for, you never know when to take a stand. And I think when fear wins, and fear is really, but someone else said this, fear is really good at what it does. It's like such a great line, right?
Yes. Yeah. Like, I mean, one you wish you wrote.
Right. And so I think there is no courage without fear. Like there's a famous Japanese proverb, fear and courage are kin, right? Like, so like lean into the fear, even when it's hard to say, like usually getting through it is, and when you know yourself, it makes it easier for you to say the thing that needs to be said. One of the things, this is for the CMO audience or now the chief growth officer audience, which I have a problem with that. Okay. Just throwing that out there, but I understand why you changed the title. If you did, chief marketing officer, but like, I feel your pain. One of the things that I've looked at is studying C-suites, and it is so hard to be you right now. It's very easy. I'm not saying the job is easy, but like chief financial officer, chief legal officer, CTO, CIO, everyone's on like one side of the brain and they're all staring at the chief marketing officer going, where are the customers? And it's like the CMO and the chief people officer are on the other side of the brain, and the other 80% are on the operating, are operators. And yet you still need to show up delicately, strongly, and figure out a way to win over or educate or edutain or figure out whatever word you need to, why you do what you do. And I think that's the hard part right now is C-suites. I wrote an article about this with my weekly dose of courage, and I think it was called C- for C-suites is what I called it, because they're missing the point of like staying human, and it's below the neck. That's where behavior change happens, not above the neck. So I feel your pain. This is like, I all love to see them. I understand those of you who chose to change your title to chief growth officer, but I actually would go back, or I go to chief brand officer. And I know that's more,
Amen.
But like, that's what we need right now more than anything else is like, don't fall into the fear of, chief growth officer. It's like, no, we need people that understand story, because story is what changes the day.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that's true. I wrote about this yesterday, I think, or was it today? Who knows? It all blends. Like about how, like, actually, I really think that AI is going to make that even more true. Like at the end of the day, like the machine is going to figure out the customer. It's going to, like, you're going to be talking to it and you're going to be chit-chatting in a way and saying, I want pants. And it's going to be like, great, you have here's some pants. It's actually going to be easier than ever to market to people, but it's not going to be easier than ever for your brand to stand out amongst everybody else. And I think that's the sort of the problem is like so many people are like, oh, like we got to get into this marketing business and we got to like personalize everything. And it's like, no, well, like people aren't responding to that, and they never have and they never will. Like it's that's a hard thing to say. So maybe that's where the courage comes in.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think that's, I also worry about what if somebody new entering the market thinks about brand or story or the power of it, because they're like, oh yeah, just throw it into AI. We'll go find our customers. It's like, no, like where's the deep insight? Where's the real thought behind this? And where, by the way, there's a space for fast, but there's also a space for slow cooked, right? And this isn't just defending one versus the other. I think there's a place for both of them. Maybe it's I feel your pain marketer, but also like stay strong and like make sure you're super clear on like, what is the feeling you want to emote? I think that's the other big, this is a little Ryan Berman preachy moment, a little preachy time, but like the second question I asked myself on the book writing journey was the dictionary definition of courage is the ability to do something that frightens you. And I know, just because you two are Thelma and Louise and are willing to take the car off the cliff, most people are not into that, right? That let alone do that at work, right? Like, I want to do frightening things at work. You're like, please step forward. I'm taking a step back, right? Like, so I just didn't like that there's no utility in that definition. And I wanted to come up with a better definition of courage. And so where we landed was 3 levers. There's knowledge, there's faith, and there's action. And you need all 3 for it to be a courageous move. How often have you known the right move and then you felt it? And when we say faith, we don't mean it in the religious sense, right? We mean it in like conviction and the inner belief sense. And then you know it and you feel it. And then like, wait, why aren't we doing anything? Like we're not taking action. You need each lever. So knowledge and faith, if you remove one of those levers, knowledge and faith without action is paralysis. And faith and action without knowledge is reckless. And then knowledge and action without faith, like if you're numb on the inside, you're working on status quo. You're working on safe. And so you storyteller, you marketer, yeah, there's a place for data, which is the knowledge component. But if you wait for 100% of that, you're probably going to get passed by a competitor you see or you don't see. And then the faith side is the feel. This is the hard part. It's like, yeah, like how do you make people feel again? And then, knowledge, faith, and action. Another way we say it's think, feel, and do. Like, what do you think about it? How does that make you feel? And what are you going to do about it? So like, that's kind of how you know, like, oh, this is actually a courageous idea. There's the think, there's the feel, there's the do. Let's go. Let's hit the gas. Let's invest in this and see where it takes us.
Yeah. And not to constantly bring it back to AI, but I am thinking a lot about that lately. But like, I feel like we're moving into this world of context, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about. Like, I think the context of like, how are you feeling in this moment? What are you doing in this moment? Even if you break it down to the sort of the marketing of day to day, like that's what is actually going to come into our world more and more. So if you don't have clarity on that in this world, nowadays it's not like, oh, it's not so linear, right? Like the AI is going to know like, oh, Chris, like she really believes in like, she wants to buy things that mean something from small brands and it knows all of these things about me. So it's providing all this amazing context to this machine to make these decisions for you. And to me, like what you're talking about is helping brands actually kind of think the way that they need to think in terms of the context. And if they don't have the context for their brand, then they really like can't move forward.
You know what I also wonder? This is not from the podcast, but more from just a lot of our consulting. Like we're doing a ton of workshops right now. And I don't know if it's because nobody's still, I feel like no one's figured out remote work or whatever this is called, whatever we're in, right?
I figured it out, but big Asian, like big companies seem to be, they're on the retreat. They're scared.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just called work.
It's just called work, right? Like work. Remember when you used to get WFH, work from home? Now it's like work from work. Like when do you get WFW? Right. They're actually working from work. But the point is, I think we're often brought in. It's like the business is called time out for a minute. It's like, and it makes sense. Like in sports teams, they train 95% of the time to play 5% of the time. And in business, it's like the opposite. Like you're on a court or a field or like you're basically in game 95% of the time. And maybe, right, like, wait, we should have probably called a timeout and talked about these things. So I do find probably because of whatever this remote work thing is, we are getting together with teams a little bit more to sort of be like, timeout. Like, what is our identity? Like, have we actually nailed do we have the clarity we need as a team? Like, if you're going to like, what type of team are we? What type of team are we functioning like today? And I won't share the client, but like we posed up 16 different types of teams that you like, do we feel like we're firefighters? Like we're just constantly waiting for the alarm to ring and we're just, we're putting out fires. Or are we a high wire act? Are we Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 8, right? Like, are we like kind of like a little bit rogue here? Are we a SEAL team? And it was really interesting to see. I think this is what's missing right now is that teams are not talking to each other. They're so overwhelmed and they're doing so much that they're like spread too thin and everything's important and they're moving too fast and I'm going to handle my thing. And it's like, no, like we need to actually bring everyone together, get that clarity so we can run at those courageous moments, right? Like, I think that's what's I want to see more of from if I'm a CMO listening, like, hey, little timeout, little pause with the team.
Yeah, I would say you can also see that in brands when it's working, right? Like you can kind of tell when a team, like there are brands, we don't need to talk about specific brands, but like there are brands right now that you're like, they are moving like as a, like they're the rugby team, like kind of like coming at you. Like it's like, okay, like these guys, like, you know, they're New Zealand, they get it. And
yeah.
I think it's really like you can tell.
I totally agree. And I think you see it even in their work. Like you see it on LinkedIn of them like not saying, oh, I did this thing, of saying, oh, this person did this person did this. And they're giving props and they're lifting each other up. I mean, I would argue that that's happening has nothing to do with work from home, not work from home, whatever the acronyms we're calling it or aren't calling it, that it's just things have moved so fucking fast and people aren't taking note and adapting and changing. And to your point, like we're just moving on this sense of urgency versus the things that really matter, because there's always a new thing. There's always a, squirrel. There's always something to go chase after versus really standing in, your brand or your team or yourself and really knowing that. Like I think that's 100% true. And when it works, it really works. And we all see it. I think that's a perfect segue to talking about
oh yes,
and it's not the greatest of all time. You're telling us it's the greatest of all teams.
Yeah, to me, I think we got GOAT wrong, and it hurts a little bit because I'm a big sports guy. But I think it's greatest of all teams, and I think we need to like really think about like, are you on the greatest of all teams? Is this the team that like, are you responsible for building this team? Because if you're responsible for building the team, do a 1-question survey. Is this the greatest team you've ever been on? And really, the bigger aha I think we're getting at here, and it almost made me sad as someone that loves courageous ideas, was that courageous ideas die without courageous leaders. Like your idea is not getting through, and people could talk all they want about, oh, ideas are a dime a dozen, blah, 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 blah. It's like wrong conversation too. The conversation is, do you have a leader that's willing to buy in on a courageous idea? And if yes, then can you get the team to rally around that? Or there's strength in numbers, right? Like it's really easy for a leader to kill an idea if only one of you showed up for the meeting. And it's like, but if the Rudy moment happens and everyone's got their jersey, I'm not saying anyone should resign, by the way, but watch that movie again. Disclaimer on this episode. But if it's clear that we're all aligned and here's why, and we also have a plan B, so we're not being wildly reckless, right? Okay, now we've got something here. And so it's a roundabout way of saying, I never thought when I started in agency life way back when that I would be in the leadership business. And that's, I honestly don't see a difference between ideas and leadership. Like to me, it's like a DNA strand that should be woven together. And it's the story from the leader's lips, all the way through their culture, all the way through their people, all the way to then to the products, all the way through their customers. And that's where I've had the most joy. I don't know if this feels like, if this lands with you or not. Here's the sad Ryan Berman story. Like I could see myself, like right now I could see myself, I'm getting goosebumps, seeing myself in my old agency chair back when there wasn't work from work or work from home, just in the office. And I remember being like, getting a new business call and someone being basically like, can you do this for this price, was the conversation. We've all been there. Can I do this for this price? Why? Well, okay, what is this? We're sliced bread. Why are you sliced bread? Okay, I haven't hung up yet. Why this price? Well, that's my budget. Okay. Can I come interview the culture? What? Like, can you just tell the world we're this? And I'm like, look, you want me to maybe lie to the outside world. Like, is this true to the culture? You have all these word of mouth advocates on the inside. If I can interview the culture, we can actually figure out like, what's the idea that they're going to get excited about too? You're leaving all this earned on the table. And so I remember hanging up with that person and being like, one, sadly, I'm not in a position to make an impact at the level I want to make. I have a fear-based marketer on the other side of the call. And by the way, they're doing the absolute best they can too, right? Like they're just trying to like, they need like, come on, I need a win. Help me with a win. And I felt like I was at the end of the conveyor belt with the rest of marketing, just trying to like put something out into the outside world. And in that moment, I realized, wow, I'm not relevant at the level that I want to be relevant at. I do believe in the power of courage. And I almost had to like fire myself, eject myself out of my last life and rebrand as a courage expert that still believes in the power of story, just to get behind the conveyor belt where all the good stuff is happening, help the leader tell the story, and then have that weave through the veins of every other decision that's being made. And like, I'm not saying that I've nailed this, that this is the quest that I'm on, is to continue to like help leaders get this part right where it's true, and then inspire the organization. And then take that same story into marketing and out into the world.
Right.
That's a decade-long story, by the way. I mean, hopefully it wasn't too long, but like that's really what I've been living the last 10 years is like, how do I put myself in a position to like help storytellers tell the right story? And again, we're back to the C-suite too. Like if you're on the other side of the brain, why this is important. It's like be the best friend of the marketer on the brand side.
Yeah. And to me, like what your story, like what I walk away from your story thinking is like, okay, you brought yourself way upstream, right? Like you took yourself out of the rat race and you were like, okay, like how do I do this in a more compelling, interesting, engaging, like all the words that you can think of way? And I think that's so much about kind of what the takeaway for me for brands in this episode is like, how are you doing that? Like, how are you like taking yourself out of the rat race that you're in? Because so many of them are just like, it's like, you know, this like been in this paid ad space for like ages now, like where everything is performance marketing, and suddenly everyone's like, and they're lost, right? And they're like under the weight of the collapse of an entire industry over them, and they're feeling it, and they need to sort of pull out like godlike action and like put themselves like out of that and say like, okay, if we're not that, because that doesn't work, like that just is a race to the bottom. If we're out, like what do we really, like what is it that we're doing? And that's scary. That's a scary thing to do.
And also I think when you're in those moments as a leader, and you are a leader. If you're listening to this show, you're clearly basically like curious.
They all of it.
Yes.
Even the young people they're leading. Everyone here is a leader.
Yes.
But how do you see yourself as, oh my goodness, part of your job is like, how is your brand being perceived by the people you're managing up?
Right.
Like, do you have the courage to bring them along on the journey and have enough confidence to go, no, here's why. Those are hard things to say, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. But that's the opportunity. Like that's the opportunity. When you were telling your story at the beginning and I was thinking of my career, that's what I'm proudest of. Hands down, very clear. Like I have these moments when I stuck a flagpole in the sand and told a CEO or CMO, and I was a brand director or whatever it was, or argued to have custom flip-flops till the day is long and, you know, finally fucking made it happen. Like those are the things that I'm proudest of where have made the most impact. And I think it goes back to what you're both saying about a leader. Like it's not just the person at the top. It can be any of those. It's really everybody. It's certainly everybody listening to them. But Ryan, what do you think? What is the thing that you found that helps somebody stay courageous when everybody else is watching, whether it's, you know, you're managing up or you're managing your brand to the world?
So we're back on track on the podcast, which is great. One of my favorite podcast episodes outside of ours, obviously, right?
Obviously.
Was with Jeff Cottrell. Do you guys know Jeff?
I adore him. Like, what an amazing fucking human.
Guy.
Yes,
right,
he's
guy.
great. He's great.
Jeff comes on the podcast and he's like, here's the truth. Here's how the story ends. You're going to get fired. Get fired for the thing that you know needs to be done. And I think what he means by that is don't be reckless. I think what he means by that is that's just one chapter in the book, but it's still your book. It's still your story. So like, Kirsten, I feel so aligned with you. It's always been the moment that you're like, shit. But I know in my heart that this is true. And I don't know if this is true to everyone. This is true to me. I think there's like the human equator, like there's above the neck and there's below the neck. And like anytime I'm above the neck, I need to like pressure test that to what's below the neck. And
meaning head or heart?
Yes. Much better stated. I like it. You get a little spit.
No. It's good. I'm going somewhere else. Okay. Head or heart.
So to me, it's like, if I feel something or gut, like, you know, it's somewhere between there. Where you're like, I know in my heart, I have to say this. And I'll tell you what, no more than, my gosh, maybe 4 weeks ago with a new client, I'm like, well, here we go. I'm about to lose a client or I'm about to keep a client for 3 years. Like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it's one or the other. And I know in my heart, it's the right conversation. And if you think about all the ways courage can be applied now, and by the way, you don't have to do all of these at one time. Like, you got to figure out what's the right. But like sometimes it just starts with the courageous conversation. Like, what is the conversation that everybody knows we should be having, but we're just afraid to have it? Like, both sides know. Leadership knows. The team knows. Right? Leadership thinks like they're right. They don't want to piss anybody off. The team's like, you have no idea what it's like in the day job. Right. And they have to have that conversation. And your job is to disarm both sides, because At the end of the day, you're going to pick up a lot of time when you do it. So what is that conversation? Sometimes it is the courageous idea. Hey, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't as courageous as we need to be. And sometimes it's like you do those two things over a long period of time. It is courageous transformation. Like that's what I love most about my world is it's like almost like Forrest Gump now, like the scene with Bubba Gump of all the ways you can use shrimp Creole, shrimp gumbo. It's like courageous conversations, courageous ideas. And we're just trying to, where do you need us most? And then let's go.
Yeah, I think that's such a key insight as far as what's the conversation that you know that you're needing to have. And I think that's, it can be personal. It can be what's the brand conversation? What's the thing in the room when we do workshops that people aren't talking about? Like everybody feels it. It's pushing and identifying those. And that's where the magic is.
And you're not going to pass go unless you have that conversation, at least with this team. And everyone's sometimes afraid to have it. But once they have it, they're like, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be, or that person didn't respond the way I thought they would respond. And it's like, okay, now what? Now let's do the fun stuff, right? Let's get to now what's the next big fear we have to attack? And like, let's go shrink that one down.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that because that feels like something you can just do every day, right? Like that feels like really doesn't need to wait for like a big workshop, doesn't need to wait for anything. Like that's something that you can kind of take action on at basically any point in the day. And, like I've been blessed with a loud mouth. So like I basically am doing this all the time. But like I think that one of the things that I would always say to people is like, it's a muscle, right? Like you have to practice speaking your mind and you have to let people practice building that muscle. And the more you do it together, like you'll just start saying things, but like you kind of can sense like the preciousness goes away. And then you start to see like, oh yeah, like I said that thing and like, oh, that didn't resonate. But that thing, that really like that worked, right? And you can kind of feel it in the room and the spark comes alive and then you can kind of just keep going. Like it doesn't need to be so scary if you're doing it all the time.
I describe courage like skiing, right? Like it's all relative. Like some people are bunny slope folks. Some people are like, give me the helicopter and I'm ready for the black diamond, courageous moment. And it's almost like both should be commended. Like the only issue is if you're not down to go to the mountain. Like if there's not a willingness, right? Then I'm the wrong human. I'm not.
Well, and you get better over time, right? Just like
don't call me. But like, yeah, but if you're a bunny slope person, no, that's okay if you're a prey ski and you want to watch too. Nothing wrong with that. But like, I want to work with.
So brave.
Yeah, it has its moments.
There's moments for that. But I think you're spot on the mindset. It's a mentality. It's a muscle. And, it's funny that I don't know when the episode's going to roll here, but let's say we're on some of our clients. They're already thinking about planning for 26 and 27 as they should. You're almost at this perfect spot where goal setting is happening, right? And I think this is not a new idea. Like we're goal setting for next year. And then you think about the people that can pull that off. And you do skill set work. So you got the goal set and you're like the skill set. Oh, Chris and Kirsten are perfect for this. They're going to run these projects. And then but there's like no work on the mindset. Hello. Like there's going to be shit. There's going to be shit. Like what about the metal and the mindset needed to pull off those goals? Right? Our budget's going to get pulled. The board's going to say this, hey, newsflash, more tariffs, the cost of eggs, like what is it? Right. So it's like, how are you doing? Are you getting the mindset ready for whatever comes your way? I think I'd love to see that on the planning, not just the goal set and the skill set, but the mindset needed to pull all that off. That is our business. That is marketing. That is storytelling.
All right. I want to pivot because you said something in your email to us that I was like, oh, well, I know for a fact that we have a ton of, both in-house agency people and outside agency people. And you said something like, I'll summarize it and you can clarify it. But you were like, we're in a death spiral, guys, and like, it's time. So, unpack that a little bit. Tell us what you're thinking. I wasn't really like related necessarily to the courageous thing. It sounded like you were just thinking out loud. And I want to know what you're thinking and how courage kind of plays into that.
I think you're right that it was sort of like a spitballing of an idea here, but I think when you're in the business for 2 or 3 years, it's hard to see. It's not to knock this, but you don't see the patterns. But when you've been doing this for 30 years, it's like what's out is in, and then what's in is out. And then a best practice is the best practice till it isn't. And then there's a new best practice, and you got to unlearn something.
It's like parenting.
Right.
100%.
I think that, just so I don't terrify, I know this is a podcast about courage, to terrify someone whether you're in-house or not in-house. I actually think that both being at an agency, it's always going to be hard, but always going to be necessary. I'm glad I don't have a 90-person agency to run anymore. I used to have hair. I don't anymore, you know. But the need for outside perspective when there's genuine trust, I don't see how you couldn't have that. You need that, but it's got to be rooted in like, do you actually trust the opinion of your agency partners? Can you go to dinner with them, right? If it's just like dog and pony, I think you're missing the mark. If it's based off like a genuine relationship and they've got the talent and the chops and you're willing to listen to them. One of my mentors used to say the two most underutilized words in business. I should do it in a New York accent because he's a New Yorker. He's like, the two most underutilized words in business are courage and no. And how hard it is to say no sometimes to a client. Yeah. Because you need money and you need to keep the lights on and you need all the things that agency people know about. And so there's time, but I also know I feel the pain of a lot of my friends who are running or CMOs or CBOs that are like, we need to move faster agencies. Let's go. And so they're turning to their in-house agencies where there's agility and the relationship is multiplying because they're on those calls together or Zooms or whatever this is, right? And so they're building those relationships faster. And so I know of a number of in-house agencies that are like, it's like, you know what, let's just put a couple hours on the calendar and like, let's see what we come up with. And so this is the other side of it. It's like, yeah, if I'm a creative right now, it's a dilemma. Like, would you rather be in-house, assuming you have trust and you're on the hip of the CMO going, we've got this one. Here's why we like it. Let's take a cut at it. Needs not so much an issue. There's not as much fear. I mean, you're already working there. Yes, you have to deliver. So tricky times is all I'm saying. It's tricky times whether you're on both sides. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like it starts with trust and then it goes to talent. I think talent still very much matters. Like, are you a trusted partner on like delivering magic for your partners? And it's not always that. Like you talked about it already on the performance side, right? Performance marketing, it's still very important. By the way, here's another thing I think I've learned. Over the last 30 years of doing this, I think I'm a shitty marketer now.
I seem to be doing all right.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think I'm really good at brand and story. I'm not excited about optimizing channels. Like that doesn't energize me, right? Like I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like I'm glad we are aligned on our brand, but like I think there's people way better at performance marketing. Like if you talk about preference marketing, whatever that is, I'm game. Let's go. But I think I'm a pretty shitty like optimizer. Like I don't even I'm exhausted thinking about that. I want to stay high level on the idea. Do you guys ever do you ever go there and have this chat on like, are we good marketers still?
Yeah, I mean, I've never tried to be a good marketer. I've never tried. So that helps. No, I mean, I think so much, to be quite honest, like the future of like that kind of marketing is done by robots and they're going to do it very, very well. And mediocrity won't exist. And the playing field is it's not only risen, it's like it's almost gone. Like that side of marketing will be so kind of irrelevant, and not because like it won't matter and you won't be doing it, but because it will be so well executed. Like that will just be like, you know, like, I don't know, like basic accounting. Like it's like you will, if you don't do basic accounting well, you probably won't be in business, but you like, you know, you should do basic accounting. And to me, like the space for agencies, and I think and can be difficult in-house, is actually the harder thing of like pulling out and saying, okay, like that thing is kind of running and it's doing its thing and there's going to be people monitoring it, and like, but mostly it's just going to kind of be working all the time, day in, day out. And then you're sort of having to be there saying, how do we rise above mediocrity? Because like everybody is essentially like really good at marketing now. Like everyone's going to be an expert. So your job as a brand and your job as a CMO and your job as an agency person is to kind of be there stewarding kind of the next thing, right? And that to me is the opportunity. And I think it's harder to do that in-house a little bit. But I think that people who've come up inside of social, for example, have done that really well. And I think that's why in-house has changed so much, is that they're used to kind of like, how do we break through this noisy thing that's noisy today? And yesterday it was different kind of noise. And they're really, really good at thinking that way. And so I think like that's where a lot of in-house agencies have gotten that talent and that skill. But when you stay inside, sometimes that skill can kind of go down, or you become used to like your own, you become really, really used to like the one thing, right, that you're really good at doing.
Right. I mean, we talk about this a lot, or I talk about this a lot. Like, you've got to drink the Kool-Aid when you're inside. You've got to be able to be a part of that, and you've got to really be in it, which is great. Like, that's amazing. And you've got to be a part of that team, kind of as we talked about earlier, like everybody's truly a leader. But I think having that perspective and being able to push and being able to, quite honestly, be a little bit more brave to say, yeah, you might fire me, but here goes. My whole life doesn't depend on it because I've got a few other clients. But I think it really is about the change that we're seeing is really with the speed. And, you've got to send it to 5 other creatives to sign off on this idea and get this. And, we're going to do a strategy thing that's going to be 2 years out. Like, that's gone, right? That's gone, because you do need the speed, you do need the trust, and you do need, taking it back to the bravery. We see the brands that are doing it, and those are the things they're doing.
I think it's a hard time to be you. Let's just call it what it is. But also,
yeah,
I'm curious your thoughts on, like, I do think the leadership piece. Do you feel, is that true from your lens? Are you seeing like it's about brave leaders, not brave marketers? Like, you're a leader first who happens to be good at storytelling and marketing?
Yeah. I mean, I think always, right? Like, at least the CMOs that I know that are doing really interesting things, especially ones that are kind of, there's a lot of brands, like legacy brands, like especially a lot of luxury brands right now who are kind of like, there's a lot of like righting of the ship, right? Like, it's like, we've been doing this thing, we were heading in this direction, and now we're like pulling the ship this way, and like it's like really big. And I think if you don't have the clarity, the conviction, and honestly like the loud mouth that you need to have, like it's not going to, it doesn't work. And I think like, yeah, you don't need to be rude and like anything, but it's just like about having the courage to say it.
But can I add one more thing?
Yes.
I think the other, I guess it is a podcast, right? So we'll add another thing, right?
Let's do it.
I do think let's also acknowledge how it can be very lonely.
Yes.
Right. It can be very lonely to be the one that says no, or look, it can be lonely if you're like, yes, I agree. I think we all agree. Like, it doesn't matter the level you're at. Like, you should treat yourself like a brand. You should treat yourself like a leader, right? You have an opportunity to move the needle. One of the things I've learned from the pod, and I have been fortunate to get lots of, just like you guys, like great guests on the show, and the higher up people get, the more alone they feel. And I share this for 2 reasons. One, if you're not in that seat right now, have a little empathy for the person that is in the seat, because they're doing the best they can to like manage boards, manage the C-suite. They don't want to make the wrong move either. And that's, sometimes that's flooded in fear. They only have so much time in the day. Maybe you want more time with that person. They're trying to manage 40 people. The amount of leaders I've had on that have said, what I don't need is another community of 100 people. I need my 5 that I can turn to and trust and rely on. Tells you that everyone's doing the best they can, but there is an overwhelming fear right now just of winning, and like having the people around them to win. And yeah, maybe it's easy to say, how do you share that pain with your team? And maybe that's the solution.
Yeah. We heard a lot of that in Cannes, and like a lot of people like that. We met with a bunch of people when we were out there, many of them readers, and like a lot of them were like, yeah, like the reason I come here is not to like do all this, but it's to go in a tiny room and like chat with another CMO who's like also going through it. And I think that is just growing day in, day out, because again, it's faster and faster and faster. And like the knowledge that they have, like you used to kind of like, you came up through the trenches, right? And you had the hard-earned knowledge and the skill and everything. And no one at the top has any of the skills that are going to get them where they're going. None of them. And that's scary, right? Like that's really scary to know that the future like doesn't really rely on the skills you have, but it relies on you being able to navigate like that world without those like innate skills. That's really something that's really different.
Yeah. I think that the loneliness is real, and I think it's across the board. And I think to your point, Ryan, it is harder. It is harder than it's been. But I think there, on the other side of that challenge, is really the opportunity to stand out and to do something that's really differentiated. I would love to pivot and kind of close out as clarity as a strategic weapon.
Oh, yes.
Talking about kind of the clarity epidemic.
Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it is. Without clarity, good luck. Clarity is a rarity. And it's just hard to break through right now. And if you're caught up in all these tactics, and yeah, I would say it's pretty clear it's a cloudy time. This is me testing now. I'm going into testing mode. I'm letting you know that just because we're all friends here. I have a keynote I'm giving in Florida next month, and I'm opening it with that we're in a worry war, and we've been in many worry wars before, right? But right now, I would call this one Worry War 2. Worry War 1 was the pandemic, and I think that caused an isolation illness, and we never won that war. We went immediately into Worry War 2, which is, if Worry War 1 was the pandemic, Worry War 2 is pandemonium. It's like, what's Donald going to say next, right? Is Elon his buddy or not his buddy? What's Vladimir like? It's the cost of eggs. It's the tariffs. It's the death of DEI. It's an anti-American world. It's anti-Semitism. There's layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers. And it's causing us, it is rolling in the fog. And also, like, the requests that are coming from the top are trying to respond to all of this. So like there's fits and starts, budgets are being cut and shifted. And it's like, yeah, this is why it's a cloudy time. This is where why I feel it's a clarity epidemic. And, you know, it's cute, but like, you cannot see your North Star on a cloudy night. Like, we all talk about the importance of knowing our true north. Now more than ever, I would invest in that true north. Like, let's figure out what is our true north as an organization. It's almost like double down on strategy, double down on where we want to go, and then let's lock arms and go after it and get after it. Is that a 2-year project, to your point? No, it's not a 2-year project, right? But like, without that, like, nobody knows which way they should be running. And so getting super clear on that direction and then putting that in play, huge opportunity right now, because most companies aren't doing that. Most companies are just they're in the optimized camp right now. Yep. They're not thinking about what is the big opportunity and where can we play. And so getting super clear right now, I'd say, like, I could have called our company Clarity. I don't think that's as strong as Courageous, frankly. But like, right, like, if that's knowledge, faith, and action, you need to know where you're going, believe it's possible, and then pull the trigger.
I love that.
Agreed.
That's the perfect ending, I think.
Sure is.
We gotta pull the trigger on ending this at some point anyway. But every time I talk to you, Ryan, I feel like I'm like, yes. I just feel like I'm like shouting. Like, not all podcasts, because I tried to, but when we talk normally, I'm like, And right. I just feel like so many of the things you said today, like, I think really resonated. I think you're right. Like, I think it's about the teams, it's about the leaders, and it's about figuring out where they're going and being brave enough to do it. So thank you for coming on and being yourself and chatting with us and sharing all the wisdom.
That's easy to do. Well, I want to thank you guys too. I know we're at time, but like, I think I need you guys too, because I feel like we're detectives. Like, we're detectives on the prowl, making sure that we're hunting down the truth. And I know you're the same way. And so it's always nice to hear even your yes, like, let's go, right? Like, I'll take that, because it's just like, all right, if we're sensing this over here and you're sensing it in your circles, then clearly we're onto something, right? Like, let's make sure we're bringing light to these conversations and continue to do what you're doing. And thank you for giving me a little airtime today. I appreciate it.
It's amazing to have you on. We really love everything that you're about and talking to you. And see, you're a great marketer. Naming it Courageous over Clarity. Well done.
Brand choice.
Yes, true.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you.
Bye, guys. See you soon. Be good.
Ciao.
Okay. Just talked to Ryan Berman, one of our favorite humans, all around courage, and some really, really good insights and takeaways.
Yeah, I enjoyed that conversation. I mean, I always enjoy talking to Ryan. I feel like he's just a really positive, like, enthusiastic, optimistic person. And even though I think actually for the conversations I've had with Ryan, I would say that he brought up like a lot more of the sort of really tough things that are going on right now. And like, you know, for him, like, you know, bringing kind of what may be perceived as kind of a negative conversation and bringing it in and really like talking about how to kind of like not literally like strategize, but like how do you kind of navigate that? I think it's actually a really good conversation to have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's got a lot of insights. Talked to 220 people he's interviewed for his podcast, and really understanding like, what does it take to be courageous? What does that actually mean? Like, how do you, what's getting in the way of that? How do you actually do that? Is it a leadership thing? Is it a team dynamic? Kind of really breaking that down, I thought was a really great conversation with a lot of really good takeaways.
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole thing, I do think it's a team thing, and like I don't think that I can really describe the team thing better than Ryan can. So like the thing that stuck out to me was like, how do you take that team stuff that he's talking about and kind of think about it in the work, which is obviously like my world, right? So like, yes, like you have to be working as a team, and like I said in the podcast, like I think the teams that are kind of, you can really feel it in a brand, like when there's like an energy and they're just like doing the right things and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's like they're savants or something. And I do think a lot of that has to do with team clarity, but it also is about like the clarity of knowing where your brand is going, and also being comfortable with the fact that like brands nowadays are sort of this like amorphous thing that are growing, and they like have a life of their own outside of everything, right? And I kept thinking a lot about that side of it. Is like, okay, so say you get this team alignment, right? Like you've got the are you working on the best team question answered, and then I think the next layer, and he talked about this, is like the courage of sort of the ideas. And I really think that that a lot of what he was saying, like for me, really resonated in that realm too, even though he wasn't necessarily speaking about that.
Right. And I think for me, what I picked up in like, are you really working on the right team, as kind of as we were unpacking it, really around courage. It's not just like, how I would have thought about this early in my career. Oh, is this the best person that does kind of e-com? And is this the best person that does this? And this is the best, this is the team that I want to be on. It's really about like the brand. What's the brand really standing for? Does that really align with me as a member of the team? What's the culture like? Is that really supporting the brand messaging and how it wants to get out there? Like all of those parts and pieces are so crucial to the team dynamics themselves. But really, as we talk a lot about, culture is really the internal of the brand and the team perspective. Like there's many brands that come to mind that are killing it out there. And again, you see them supporting each other on LinkedIn, whatever it might be, saying, oh no, these guys did a great job. These guys did a great job. Experiences that we saw in Cannes, different campaigns that we've talked about. And you just can tell that these teams are really working like well-oiled, machines. They're doing the thing.
And I think like, I'm obviously thinking so much about AI lately. So like a lot of it really relates back to that for me. Like at the moment, it's just where my headspace is at. But, like I was reading this thing the other day, like about, and I think this is the future that's coming, is that, inside of your team in the next year, you're gonna have people of all levels building products, like literally like tools and things that you've never had before, and they're just gonna like come up with them like on their own and have a full-fledged like, hey, like this is a tool for you that like didn't exist yesterday and now it exists, right? And that is the future of work in the next year, like without a doubt. And that is very unsettling, right? Like it's like, oh, like suddenly like someone's gonna just go off and in an afternoon they're going to create this thing that like I'm not going to really understand, and like it's going to do all these things, and like is it going to be cool, is it not going to be cool? And so much of that, there's going to be so much fear stuff happening, because it's like everybody is building something, trying something. As a leader, you're going to come in and your team is going to have all these tools and things that they've made and like things they've cobbled together, vibe coded and all of this stuff. And I think that the world is really, really changing. And like, I think it's, I think that what I was talking about with Ryan about like, you're going to come in and you're not going to have the skills and the knowledge necessarily to understand all the things that are happening in your company, like all the things that people are creating. There's just no way you're going to be able to do that and have the technical know-how or like even, see what they're using it for. And so it's going to come down to like, are we all like kind of like feeling like the energy to like be able to safely do these things, that you're like there and that you feel safe amongst your team. And that's where a really successful, like it's going to be like all sides, and it's just going to be really, really interesting time. So
yeah, I mean, I love that. Like that pushes way into it for me. Like, but that like so much stuff comes up with that. I think what you're talking about brings up is like, you got to be able to sit in the uncomfortable, because it's going to be so unknown. And that's a really like, that's a fucking superpower to be able to do that personally and certainly professionally, and to be able to really sit in that, be comfortable with that, and then team dynamics and culture and safe space and support and all of those parts are only going to be, ever more important, so that because you don't have that necessarily knowledge base, everything's changing, everything's new. No one's ever going to be able to keep up with all of the things. So it's going to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And then I think really what we kind of talked about at the end, the clarity epidemic and clarity and strategy being ever so important. Like, to me, it's the Venn diagram of those parts and pieces that are really going to be more important than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's, there's just a lot, like you can talk about, like we could relate it back to brand. And I think, Ryan brought up like, oh, brand is bigger, like going to be bigger now. And I think it will be. And I think having that clarity and conviction, but to me, it's so much bigger. Like the way that we are going to operate as brands, as companies, as agencies, and all of these things, like it's all fundamentally like shifting under everyone's feet right now. And I think like having clarity like above all that too, of saying like, okay, no matter what, like all of these things, like they all have to be laddering, like kind of like laddering up to this thing. And like, yeah, it might like shift and it might like evolve and it might do things as we go, but it all has to be kind of like, you have to feel that, or it's just going to all implode.
Yeah.
Like very, very quickly.
100%. It's going to very clearly go one of two ways, very, very strongly. Yeah. I also love his redefinition of GOAT, right? Not the greatest of all times, but the greatest of all teams, and really focused on that, which, to your point and what we're talking about now, it's only going to be more important, the team versus the individual.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably always been true, but I think, and I think it's an interesting thing because I actually think, again, I know I'm a little bit of a broken record today, but like team is going to change too. Like right now, like I think about you and how you like use Claude as like team. Claude is like, I refer to Claude like, because like you use Claude and I use chat, like ChatGPT, and like I'm like, yeah, work with Claude on that. Like it's like right. I like refer to him as like your teammate, right? Like your person.
Totally.
And like he's evolved, and I know actually like his capabilities of like how he can kind of enhance you and how like where he falls apart. And I'm like, okay, like this was great. Claude's really good at this, but he's not really good at that.
Right.
And like,
Claude's kind of crushing on you.
Yeah. Well, they all crush on all of us, and that's their greatest weakness. Like to be
right,
honest,
the people
like,
pleasing.
The people pleasing will be the downfall of
everyone, really.
Well, like all brands, to be honest. Like even that's the thing about like we could bring it back to what we were talking about today. Is that if you're not having the kind of if you don't have the ability to be like, whoa, that's a terrible idea, then you're not a very useful teammate, and you're definitely not a very good leader. And all day, people are getting this positive and reinforcement, like, wow, you're all the best marketer in the world. What a fantastic clarifying piece of information. That makes everything so much easier. Oh my gosh. Great wisdom. Great wisdom. Like,
where's day. Like, that's a really fucking bad idea, Kirsten. Like, how about this?
Well, and you can tell chat to do that, but like, it's, like it doesn't want to do that. Like the robot wants you to, like its end goal is to make you look better, right? And it really wants to do that. And so like it really wants to people please you on the way to like being the best assistant and like it's incentivized to basically like make you happy, and you're happy when it like is giving you like all of this ego boost. So I do think it, like, again, so all of this team dynamic stuff is all changing, and like it's all like really evolving, and there's not just human beings anymore. There's also all of these like assistants and agents and da-da-da-da-da. And like, I'm not talking about like how that's all going to change things, but it actually is even more important to have the clarity, because like there's just these you don't have an 80-person team anymore. You actually have a 160-person team, because every single one of them has an assistant on the side that's helping them do their work and doing all this stuff. And you're managing those assistants. You're managing them. They're managing, like, it's just like you aren't actually dealing with what you think you're dealing with anymore. And it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think then him talking about his upcoming keynote and the worry the worry war too, I thought was really fascinating and something that we talk about as far as like people's mindset, really like one of the things that I loved that we talked about was, what's the conversation you're not having? Because that's what we uncover in workshops. That's what, that's always the conversation to be had. What conversation is the brand not having? How can you lift up shame, whatever it is around your mission? Like there's so many parts and pieces to really dissect that question. But I think really understanding what's the conversation that you're not having. And on the flip side of that, there's this real worry across the board that everybody is feeling in one way or the other, and making sure that we're really addressing that, speaking to that, and then really supporting that so that people can be brave and brands can make great decisions and teams can feel empowered and connected.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, well, we talk about this in our workshops, right? Like my role is always to like make people like fight kindly with one another, right? And that's how I see my role in a workshop. Is like, how can I kind of like ask the uncomfortable questions on behalf of basically everyone else? Because like, I don't have anything to like, I have no skin in this game. Like you can just look at me and like roll your eyes and be like, she doesn't get the business, like whatever. And that's not really ever what happens. But like, you always, you feel safer because you can say that, right?
Right.
And I think that is one of the things that I think is easier as an outside I don't think actually agencies do that, but certain people who are outside people can do that. Like a lot of agencies are just like, yes, like I can like, deliver you a great campaign, and they're like actually just like kissing your butt, but like it's not the same. But if you're in
having that,
you can be kind of that outside person. And I do think younger people, I do think social people, and I mean by like social media people who've grown up kind of pitching social media ideas, I actually think that they're fairly good at that kind of thinking. And it's one of their powers is that they've had to basically like convince people of their bad idea a lot, because like their boss doesn't understand oh, on TikTok, like if I give it cat, like, like it's like, oh, like Labubu, like no one gets it, like type of thing. They've had to do that day in, day out for years, where they're like constantly like, so I've got this crazy idea. You've got to trust me. I'm going to make it. And then the person is like, oh God, right? But at the same time, we've also now have a bunch of people who've realized like, hey, actually, when I do say yes, like great things happen.
Totally.
So maybe we've all kind of been working on that strength. And I would say like, again, that's the muscle. And like, how do you bring that into more of kind of your day-to-day kind of mindset, right? Like not just social campaigns.
Right. But I think having that as kind of a proof point, which I think it certainly is. And when those people are brave and push the envelope and then they're successful, right, then it shows us, oh, let's lean more into that. And I think that's a really particularly good insight for that kind of specific knowledge base and specific experience base that they've kind of had to come, up against the stream constantly and are pitching those ideas and can't wait to see as they get higher and higher and are ultimately leading the companies, how brave they can really be. Because I think it goes back to, the bravery conversation.
Yeah. Well, I would say that they're already starting to come into that place, but so many people get wrong, like, oh, like they're just like, oh, they understand social, right? No one understands anything anymore. This person who understands social, They don't understand AI. Like, stop hiring for what people understand. Like, that is like, just stop. Like, no one you're going to hire is going to understand the thing that you're going to be doing next year. Like, almost no one. Right. Not even the AI people that I talk to know where AI is going to, like, in a year. Like, even the best ones that I talk to on a regular basis, none of them know. So you're going to have to start hiring for the ability to say, hey, I think this is what's happening. I've got this really good idea. It's based in like, this is why I think it's going to work. And like, this is how it's laddering up. Like that type of person, hire that person.
Yep.
Like none of us know what's going on.
Right. And again, I think it comes back to that's why clarity, strategy, and brand will be so important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enjoy the episode. We'd love to hear what you think. Comments, questions, give it a little love, share it with somebody.
Yeah. And if you I would say also I'm always like curious, and I bet Ryan would like it too, if there's a leader that you've worked with or that you have admired and you think is doing kind of all of the things we discussed, like it would be fun to drop it in the comments and just tell us who we should be watching for this kind of behavior.
Would love to hear that. And leader as you define it, not necessarily the person at the top.
All right. Ciao. This was fun.
Till next time, stay curious.
That was it for this episode of Good Thinking. Don't forget to tune in next week.
If you found this valuable, subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app.
And don't forget to read on Substack for even more insights.
And if you really liked it, drop us a heart. We'd love to hear from you.
Ciao. Until next time.